Good evening. This is a little bonus section to Chapter 2 about absolute values. And hopefully you remember from you've learned this for a couple years now, is absolute value is a number's distance from 0 on a number line. And the symbol we use for absolute value are these little straight bracket things here. Okay? That means the absolute value of x equals 5. Now, important thing to know is that when we see absolute value, like this equation here is asking what values of x have an absolute value of 5. So what numbers could I put in the absolute value sign and get 5 out? Hopefully you're saying to me right now 5 and -5. Okay, because the absolute value of 5 is 5. The absolute value of -5 is 5. So absolute value equations, for the most part, are going to have two solutions to them. So here's the steps that we're going to follow. The first one should look very similar to you. We're going to use inverse operations to isolate the absolute value. So instead of isolating the variable initially, we will later, but we're going to isolate the absolute value on one side of the equation. Once we have the absolute value isolated, we have to think about two cases, okay? And I'll show you what I mean by that here in a second. But we're going to get the absolute value by itself, and then, because of the two solution thing that I just talked to you about, we're going to have two different cases to solve. So let's work through some examples. We'll start simple, and they'll get a little harder as we go on. So here's our first example. And this one's pretty easy because step 1 is already done for us. We have the absolute value of x equals 12. So the absolute value is all by itself on one side, which is what we want. So the two cases are kind of like what we talked about. X could be either 12 or x could be -12. Okay, because again, the absolute value of both of those numbers is 12. Okay, that one was an easy one. Let's get to something a little more interesting. Now here, my absolute value isn't by itself yet. I have 3 times the absolute value of x plus 7 equals 24. So you can see here my absolute value is being multiplied by 3. I got to get rid of this 3. So to get rid of that, I'm going to divide by 3 because it's 3 times, so I do the opposite. So I get x plus 7, the absolute value of x plus 7, equals 8. Now I have the absolute value by itself. It's very tempting here to want to do -7 to both sides, but I can't do that yet. Okay? So what I gotta do is, again, I have two cases. This absolute value of x plus 7 could equal 8. It could also equal -8. So let's solve each of these equations now for x. Well, I gotta subtract 7, subtract 7. So x could equal 1. That would be one solution. That would work. Or over here, -7 minus 7, it could equal -8 minus 7, which is -15. -15 would also work. So there's our two solutions. And you'll notice all I did was take whatever was in the absolute value, set it equal to the positive version and the negative version of our answer. Here's another one. Here I have the absolute value of x minus 3 equals 4. So I want to get this absolute value by itself. It's currently being subtracted by 3, so I need to add 3. So then I end up with the absolute value of x equals 7. Well, again, I have two options here. X could equal 7, or it could equal -7. So again, these are my two solutions.
Matthew Pape, if you're in the building, please go to the middle school doors. Matthew Pape, please report to the middle school main entrance. Thank you.
Don't mind that announcement. Let's look at this last example here. So here I have the absolute value of x minus 2. Two things are happening to it. It's being timesed by 2 and minused by 6, or subtracted by 6. So, again, I got to get it by itself. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. And that gives me 2 times the absolute value of x minus 2 equals 14. Then I got to divide by 2. Absolute value of x minus 2 equals 7. So now I have the absolute value by itself. So I have to consider the two cases. One, x minus 2 could equal 7. Or x minus 2 could equal negative 7. So let's solve each of these. Here I have to add 2, add 2. So x equals 9. Here I have to add 2, add 2. So x equals negative 5. So it could be, once again, either answer. Okay? So most absolute value equations have two solutions to them. Okay? Because of the fact that we have to consider two cases. Now, as soon as I say that, I'm going to say this. Not every absolute value equation has two solutions. There are a couple special cases that you need to be aware of. First of all, if your absolute value expression equals 0, there can only be one solution. And this makes sense because if you think about the two cases thing, we do a positive answer and a negative answer. Well, if the answer is 0, then you can't really have positive 0 and negative 0. There's no such thing. Okay, so there would just be one case on those types. The other thing is if we come up with an absolute value that's equal to a negative number, that's not going to work because the absolute value of anything is positive. So if I have something like that, it would be no solutions. I have an example of each one here, and hopefully that'll help you understand it better. So here I have negative 8 equals the absolute value of x plus 2 minus 8. Now again, I want to get this absolute value by itself, so I'm going to add 8 to both sides. Now negative 8 plus 8 is 0. So then I have 0 equals the absolute value of x plus 2. Now I've got the x plus 2, that absolute value by itself, and so now it would be time for my two cases. But like I said before, I can't really have positive 0 and negative 0. It's no such thing. So I really only have one case. So if I solve this, I figure out that my one solution here is negative 2. Okay, so if we ended up with an absolute value equal to 0, like we did in this example, there's only going to be one solution. Now let's take a look at this one. I have the absolute value of x plus 4 plus 3. Again, I want to isolate the x plus 4, the absolute value, so I'm going to minus the 3. Well, that gives me the absolute value of x plus 4 equals negative 3. Now right here, a little alarm should be going off in your head. Ding, 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 ding. That can't happen. Okay? The absolute value of anything isn't going to be negative 3. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Absolute value has to be positive. So right here, okay, I would say, nope, that's not going to work. I can't do the two cases. I have no solution. Okay, so those are kind of the special exceptions, so to say, of absolute value. Most of the time they will have two solutions, but in these two cases here they will have either one solution or no solution at all. Okay, so we'll be working on these tomorrow in class. Remember, if you need to, watch this again. Okay, talk about the special cases. If you have any questions, make sure you make note of that so you can ask in class. And as always, I'm available before school if you want to ask me anything specific. Okay? We'll see you guys tomorrow.